share my thoughts because it's a monumental day for the country. My staff just told me 21 years ago tomorrow, I think, passed the articles of impeachment against President Clinton. So I've been through this before. It's a very tough time for the body, a tough time for the country. I can remember that experience well. And just to share a few thoughts about it, the American public never really bought in. Misconduct that he was sanctioned for by the court. Having said that, the public thought that the remedy we were pursuing was a bridge too far. I think they didn't like the conduct, but they thought that removal from office was an inappropriate outcome. So what did I learn? I learned without public support, getting a president removed is not going to happen. So President Nixon, I was getting on up there now. I was in 1970s. I was getting ready to graduate high school and go to college. And what happened there is that the conduct over time was proven to be egregious, that President Nixon was personally involved in a conspiracy to cover up a crime, and that the tapes and other evidence became overwhelming not only to members of the House, but both parties and the public. That's missing here. That was missing in the Clinton impeachment. So what will happen is pretty much what I think happened in the Clinton case. There was some initial bipartisan support. 33 Democrats voted to open up the inquiry. The impeachment of President Trump has been pretty much along party lines from the very beginning. I supported the Mueller investigation. I introduced legislation with Senator Booker, Coons, and Tillis, saying that the special counsel, Mr. Mueller, could not be fired except with cause. I believe that Bob Mueller, who I've known for a long time, would be fair, not only the president, but the public at large. I did not know what was there. Somebody like Mueller needed to look at all things Russia and Trump, and I gave him the space to do his job. The report was submitted to the Congress and the American people, and no action was taken. And I thought that would end it. I thought it was over. I thought we'd take our cases to the American people, but I was wrong. So what happened in the House, impeachment driven by partisans, this is unique. It's the first impeachment in modern times, anyway, driven by people within the body where there was no outside counsel. Whether you agree with the Clinton's impeachment or not, Ken Starr spent several years looking at allegations and made a report to Congress detailing abuse by President Clinton. The Watergate prosecution was done outside of the political system, and that's been missing here. So I think this exercise in the House is beginning to weaponize impeachment. The Intel Committee conducted the fact-finding elements of it, which is unusual. The process they used, I think, is dangerous to the presidency as an institution. When it gets here, my goal is to have as short a trial as possible. What does that translate to? When 51 people are ready to vote, that's when we'll vote. The most likely outcome is to use the trial record, what they used in the House to impeach President Trump will be the trial record for the Senate. I am not going to support witnesses being called for by the President. I'm not going to support witnesses being called for by Senator Schumer. We're going to vote on the same product the House used with my vote, and I think most senators on our side are ready to move forward at an appropriate time. We'll listen to the House case, allow the President to make comments to his legal team, then we'll vote, and sooner the better for me. So with that, I'll take some questions, and I'll write with impeachment. Okay, thank you very much for coming. Well, the first thing I want to do is find the scope of the problem. So next year, I want to call everybody who signed the warrant application and ask them, why did we not know this? And try to explain to the public, how does this work? Do the people at the top of the chain just sign it and not look at any of the details? How did it get so off script? So when they do an audit of other FISA applications, is this a systematic problem, or is it pretty much limited to Carter Page? If it's not a system problem, that tells me that people in the Carter Page case got drunk with power, had a personal agenda, and they acted on it. If it's a systematic abuse, it tells me that the FISA process needs to be dramatically reformed. Either way, it's bad, but I want to start with the people who signed the warrant and have them explain to me why they signed it. Then I'm going to call in Christopher Wray, and I'm going to ask him, what have you done internally to make sure this never happens again? I'll get with Mike Lee and Dick Durbin and Senator Leahy and others to see if we can have a bipartisan reform measure. I'm going to go to President Trump and say FISA needs to be reformed, but if possible, we need to save the ability to monitor entities to influence our economy and our politics. I think there's a need for FISA, but FISA as it exists today will not be allowed to exist.
And when it comes to Rudy Giuliani, why do you think he should testify in front of the Senate? Are you concerned by his actions?
Well, I think there's a lot of things regrettable about all of our conduct, mine included, but we're not going to impeach people because we have disagreements. If being unnerved by presidential action was the ground for impeachment, I would have impeached President Obama. I was unnerved by a lot of things he did, and Fast and Furious, but it never rose the level of impeachable conduct. And I can tell you there was a lot of pressure on Republicans to impeach President Obama because people just didn't like him. And that's what I fear. You know, Mueller, to me, if he had found something, and I told the president to his face, if you actually were engaged in coordinating with the Russian government or their subsidiaries during the 2016 election, that will be it for me and you, because we can't survive as a nation. So I didn't know what Mueller was going to find, but I believe it was important for him to be able to look. I think it's important for me now to come down hard on what they're doing. An impeachment process that was started by politicians with no outside inquiry on a short timetable for political purposes, shutting out the president's ability to participate in the proceedings in a meaningful way. So as open-minded as I was to Mueller doing his job, I'm going to be very closed-minded about this process. As to Rudy, I don't know what Rudy's got, but I'm going to send him a letter. If you're going to go on national television and tell the country that you found evidence of a cover-up, then I hope you know what you're talking about. He's a good friend. He was a strong supporter of Senator McCain. He actually helped engineer an endorsement for candidate Trump of my good friend John McCain in the primary. I like Rudy a lot, but we're going to have to watch what we say. So I'm going to have an open invitation to Rudy Giuliani to come to the Senate Judiciary Committee and tell us what you found. And if he comes, you got to be willing to ask questions about your conduct. It's just not good for the country to make these accusations on cable television without them being tested.
So do you have concerns about his conduct?
I don't know. I don't know who he talked to. I don't know what he did. I can understand him trying to defend the president. I have no evidence that the Ukraine interfered in the 2016 election. There are articles suggesting that DNC members met with the Ukrainian officials. I know that Manafort was disliked in Ukraine, maybe for a good reason. So we're going to look at that with Senator Johnson and Grassley, but I have no verification. When it comes to the emails being stolen, the Ukrainians had nothing to do with that. The whole server thing is just bizarre to me. It was the Russians, not the Ukrainians. But there are some indications that maybe Ukraine did get involved with members of the Democratic National Committee through media reporting I have no verification of that by the Intel Committee, but we will look. As to Rudy, you're certainly welcome to come to the committee and share with me your findings.
Senator, you talked about over in the House, you think that they're weaponizing this process, they're rushing through it. So why do you think a quick trial is the way to go here in the Senate versus hearing some of these witnesses out, whether from the president or otherwise?
I've made up my mind about the accusations. I've seen the transcript. I understand the basic tenets of what Sunderland's saying is hearsay upon hearsay. I've never believed this was an impeachable offense. I've got no problem with the phone call. The guy ran on corruption, and there's been questions for a long time about why the guy was fired. Joe Biden is truly a good friend. I've got no evidence that Joe Biden did anything wrong. All I'm suggesting that his son being on that board raises questions. On February the 2nd, when the president of Burisma's home was raided, board member Hunter Biden started calling the State Department. There were people in the State Department had concerns about a conflict of interest. I don't know if anything wrong happened, but somebody needs to look. We're not going to have a country where you can go after Trump morning, noon, and night and all of his family associations. And when a legitimate question is being raised, did Hunter Biden as a board member use his influence at all to fire the prosecutor? That's the question. I think somebody needs to look in a responsible manner. The floor of the Senate during impeachment is not the way to do this. I know a lot of people on the president's team want to call Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and go into all this. We can look at these accusations outside of impeachment. So I'm going to tell the president no to his witness request, because I think what's best for the country is to get this behind us as soon as possible. One thing I would say to American people, the last week has been pretty amazing. We've gotten a bipartisan budget. We're going to apparently take out the USMCA after impeachment. We've got a first down payment on a trade deal with China. So there is some space up here to continue to do the business of the American people. As soon as impeachment is over, I think that space will grow.
Senator, you spent quite a bit of personal time with the president over the last 3 years. Do you expect him to be chastened or emboldened at the end of this?
It's a good question. I talked to him today. I said, "How you doing?" "Well, I'm being impeached. Other than that, I'm doing okay." I think he sees this as a partisan exercise. I think he's worried about the effect it will have on the presidency itself. President, when you look at the last week, you've accomplished some things that would be a great year for any normal president. Your legacy is going to now include being impeached by the House, acquitted by the Senate. The question is, will it be more than that? And I assured him it would, that if it gets a second term, it will be bigger than it is today. That I stressed to him that what you're doing to rebuild the military is much appreciated. My view of getting out of the Iran deal is a good move. What you've done in Israel is historic, and the way you've reshaped the federal courts are going to be one of your greatest legacies. So, Mr. President, you've got a lot to be proud of. Take your case to the American people. But if you get a second term, I think that says a lot about the impeachment process.
What about his 6-page letter to the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi? You talked about an attack on American democracy.
Yeah, I think he believes that. I think the president was honest in the letter that, and I'm really worried about what they've done, because now what we're doing is basically saying, without outside counsel, in a matter of months, not years, we can impeach a president without fundamental due process, no right to confront your accuser, no right to participate in the fact-gathering process. I share his concern. But that letter was a guy getting a lot off his chest. Here's what I think about the president. And I talked to the First Lady today, too. This is hard. It's hard on everybody's family, but, you know, it's been tough. I mean, from the time he took office to now, it's just been unending. And he's a handful, and he's, you know, part of his problems are self-driven, but I do have some sympathy for his family and for the president as a person. That comes from getting to know him. But I think he's tough enough to withstand this and do right by the country. I can't believe he's been able to get through all this still standing. Most people would have, I think, maybe quit a long time ago. So anyway, I'm optimistic.
Senator, Republicans talk a lot about precedent as far as impeachment is concerned. What are you hearing, not just from your constituents, but also from other members, as far as going years into the future, as far as political payback is concerned?
I think I worry about that. When they changed the rules to have a majority vote to confirm judges, my fears are coming true. Judges are getting more partisan, even on our side. So anytime you change institutional protections, my fear is that impeachment will be weaponized. It won't be the dramatic event that it used to be. It's becoming a normal thing to do. And the presidency itself, I think, will suffer. And the one thing I told my colleagues, anything you do to us, we can do to you. We have some people on our side just as crazy as people on their side.
That sounds very much like I-9
It very much is where these things go. And that's what you want to avoid. I think the Senate is not in that place. I think if you talk to senators quietly, it ranges from, I'm really disgusted with what Trump did, but I don't want to turn the Senate into a circus. So I think there's a desire by senators, quite honestly, to get this chapter closed and move forward, to convince the country, if nobody else, that we're capable of having political differences without shutting down the Senate.
Ready to do this quickly, Senator Cruz is on to give you the
Yeah, a motion to dismiss will not stand. I think a motion to dismiss is probably not going to be in order. I think it will be required to listen to the House's case based on the record assembled to impeach, that there will come a point when the House has had a fair chance to make their case, the President's had a chance to respond without witnesses on either side, then we'll move to final passage. I don't want a motion to dismiss. I want a vote on the articles themselves. One last thought about the obstruction of Congress. The real danger here is that you're putting future presidents in a trap. If you set an artificial deadline in terms of the impeachment inquiry, and you start asking for security advisor, his chief of staff, I think most presidents are going to fight back legally. Well, they've cut off the ability of the president to pursue legal recourse because of the time periods in question. And I think that is something all of us should be worried about. You can construct in a scenario where a president obstructs Congress simply because they want to challenge what Congress is doing in court, and Congress has taken that off the table. That, to me, is probably the most chilling effect of this particular article. Thank you very much. We'll get through this, and we will start governing and hopefully build on the last week. And prescription drugs, there's a space for that, the USMCA. I just got back from Pakistan, Afghanistan. Why did I go? There are Americans in harm's way. There's some potential for breakthrough maybe with peace talks. I don't know. But thank you very much. I believe that we can reduce our forces below 12,000 based on the capability of the Afghans increasing. That is not a beginning of a withdrawal. It is a reduction in force based on the capability of Afghans increasing. I don't want one American in Afghanistan more than needed to protect us and secure our allies. One last warning about Afghanistan. There was a battle in Nangarhar involving ISIS-K, which is the Afghan version of ISIS. It was a hell of a fight. The Afghans acquitted themselves well, but we were decisive in that outcome. We've captured over 400 ISIS types alive, killed a bunch more, and most all of them are foreign fighters. So my fear is that if we don't watch it, the next safe zone for ISIS is going to be in Afghanistan. General Mueller believes that he can reduce our forces that below 12,000 and maintain our ability to protect the homeland and provide support to the Afghan military. any withdrawal for below 12,000 to me is possible. If you go below 8,600, then I think you're putting the whole mission at risk. Whether or not the Taliban are serious about peace talks, I doubt it. They attacked our base at Bagram, and I met with Pakistan. I see a desire in Pakistan by Prime Minister Khan and the new Chief of Staff of the Army, General Bajwan, to begin to deny the Taliban safe haven they've enjoyed all these many decades in Pakistan. The day that Pakistan changes the dynamic on the ground in Pakistan for Afghan Taliban will be an acceleration of the end of this conflict. I think we've got a more reliable partner in Pakistan we've had in years. So 2020 could be a real breakthrough in Afghanistan. Thank you.